I'm Dexter. And there's only room in this world for one dark passenger. No, please, no!
I'm really enjoying this new season of Dexter. I think it's a great return to form for a series that feels like it's lost its way in the recent years. At the time that I'm recording this, we are 2 episodes removed from the finale, and I'm just gonna say, I think that at the end of it, it's time for Dexter to go to prison. Not as a way to end the series, but rather as a way to continue it. Okay, so hear me out. We all know Dexter is a serial killer, and so for a long time the idea of him getting caught and going to prison would basically be a game over state. That would be end of story. And we've seen that a couple of times throughout the series. As far back as season 2, there have been characters who discovered his secret identity, which then placed Dexter at this crossroads where the idea of prison was lurking over him in some form or another.
Jesus fucking Christ, you're the Bay Harbor Butcher.
I really hate that name.
But the thing is, he always got out of these situations, and often conveniently so, as one of the characters who was getting in his way would be removed from his path in some way or another, usually through the intervention of another character. And I think this is in some way what's been holding the series back from truly evolving into a next phase or a next stage of evolution. Which is not necessarily a critique of the earlier seasons, as it makes sense that you don't want to have this kind of character arc right at the beginning. But now, it's been long enough, the series has been kind of dragging, trying to reboot itself a couple of times, I think. And I feel like it's time, and I think this could actually be a lot of fun. For starters, before we even get to Dexter in prison, that would be the moment he is caught, brought in, and we get like a big courtroom spectacle where the truth is finally revealed after all these years to everyone, to every character in the story world, and we get to see everyone react to Dexter. And Dexter himself also maybe going through the emotions of having finally released his mask to the public. I think this could already be a compelling episode on its own, but again, this is just the beginning, because next, Dexter goes to prison, and this is where the real next stage of his story would begin.
I've lived in darkness a long time. Over the years, my eyes adjusted until the dark became my world and I could see.
One of the things I enjoyed most about the old Dexter was the way he always tried to awkwardly fit into some social environment that he didn't understand the rules of, and I think this would be really funny if we have that again in a prison environment where he's suddenly put together with all these different inmates and gangs and I don't know what, but
Oh, it's hot as a pig's asshole on this asphalt.
It's just the idea of Dexter with his dry-witted narration moving through a prison environment that I think could be really enjoyable. And maybe he'll make a buddy like his bunkmate or someone like that, someone who better understands the social dynamics and who helps Dexter navigate his way through them. We also see this in the current season where Dexter is often put together with someone who is a little bit more extroverted than he himself is, which creates these fun interactions where Dexter is kind of pulled out of his comfort zone a little bit.
Praying, not my strong suit.
And maybe in his own way he enjoys prison life to some extent. Maybe he enjoys the structure, maybe he enjoys not having to pretend and, being locked up with all these other inmates who, have done crimes similarly to him, which is another element that we're also seeing in this season where Dexter feels some kind of relief at being among other serial killers and not having to pretend.
Said things tonight that I've never been able to express out loud before.
Well, that's what these gatherings are for.
Though, of course, in this season he is still hiding his true identity, which he wouldn't have to do anymore when he is in prison and, everything is fully revealed. But of course, the thing he cannot do in prison is commit more murders. And this, I think, could also be an interesting source of conflict with the dark passenger inside him. It's not just that Dexter is a vigilante who kills for the greater good. He has this inner urge within him. And I'd be curious to see the writers push that to an extreme where we really see a confrontation with his inner darkness. Maybe it will start to affect his character. Maybe he'll start lashing out. Maybe he'll become more violent. There's a lot of different directions you can take this. But I think the most interesting one would be to see Dexter actually trying to commit a murder like he used to do, but in prison. You know, maybe there's an inmate who is about to be released, but Dexter finds out he's about to commit some kind of horrible crime once he gets out. And so he wants to prevent that, but obviously he has to do that within the limits of the prison system. Maybe there's even like a corrupt or evil prison guard, which would be even more complex, you know, and would be even more difficult for Dexter if he then wants to get this person out of the way for the greater good and also to satisfy his dark passenger. Also to maintain some connection to the outside world, you know, maybe there'll be another serial killer on the loose, and the police are at a loss as to how to capture him, and so they end up bringing in Dexter as this kind of Hannibal Lecter type consultant who then gets to discuss and walk through his psychology with another detective and maybe do some forensic work, you know, maybe do some blood spatter analysis, something like that. Again, it's that kind of dynamic as in Silence of the Lambs between Hannibal Lecter and the detective. I think that could be really fun.
I'll help you catch him, Clarice.
Lastly, I think it would also be interesting to see how the outside world, not necessarily the characters in the story, but the world around them, reacts to Dexter's revelation. You know, there's always been a certain cultural fascination with serial killers, and maybe this could also be represented in a season like this where there would be fans, you know, Dexter would get fans or admirers, then maybe even like people who want to write a book about him. Maybe there's even like a free Dexter movement, especially considering the code that he lived by or the code that he murdered by, which I think would lead to some interesting public debate once that would be revealed, you know, in the world of Dexter. And this then would be something that also informs the ending. The one problem with putting Dexter in prison is that it's very hard to get him out again, so it's kind of a point of no return. And I think that is fine if you approach it as a final season, as a way to finally wrap things up into a more definitive state. Maybe there's some kind of hint that he will be released earlier, maybe not. I think the important thing that would happen here emotionally is that Dexter is finally at peace with himself, that he's no longer holding up this barrier between himself and the world around him. And so I think that no matter how or where he ends up, I think as long as that beat is successfully landed emotionally, then I think the show will have a satisfying conclusion. But then again, maybe they want to continue the show and they'll make him escape in some way or another. I don't know. What do you think? Would you like to see Dexter in prison? Let me know in the comments if you have any more ideas or additions to this. I'd love to read them. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one.